Born with a funny name. Hi, I'm called Luke Yu, but that wasn't always my name. I had it legally changed because my birth name is absolutely terrible. I'm almost dreading telling you what it was, but here it goes. My parents named me Puck Yu, and you can only imagine why I chose to change it as soon as I could. Now, you might be asking yourself why my parents would name me something so awful. To them, it was a great name, but there was nothing cruel about it, or at least that's the way they saw it. My parents weren't born in America, you see. They were immigrants and were really proud of their roots. They wanted their son to be familiar with their traditions and never forget where they came from. To them, giving me an English name was like giving up on their culture and everything they had learned while growing up. Apparently, a really well-known and respected ancestor of my dad had been called Puck. He was a wise man and even appeared in history books in my parents' home country. He was like a war hero or something like that. I read a lot about him, but in my mom and dad's native language, my name doesn't have a nasty meaning. Now in English, it's really a mess. I mean, my first name alone is already a problem, but combined with my surname, it's a recipe for disaster. I've heard every single joke about it, and it's gotten so incredibly old. Plus, I look Asian, but I was born in America, so people just think at first that I don't even realize how bad it sounds. Believe me, I do. I was raised here, and my first language is English. I don't consider myself Chinese. Sure, I like my heritage and love my mom's cooking, but that's not my identity, and I would never move away from America. It's my home, and this is the place I want to be in. So, though my name might sound super normal back in my parents' country, here in America, it was ruining my life. My parents flat out refused to change it, no matter how many times I tried to reason with them. There wasn't a single argument I didn't use. I tried getting mad, crying, begging. I even tried reasoning with them. I wrote a big list with alternative names for them. I researched our family history and suggested different options to choose from after so many of our ancestors. They didn't like a single one, always having something bad to say about them. The only hero in our family was Puck, and they refused to dishonor his memory by changing my name. They explained that I needed to be proud of my heritage and understand that I was an American, so I shouldn't care what people in this country had to say about me. I got so mad when they said that. I was born and raised here, but they simply don't see it that way. And I do care what people my age think when they hear my name. Now, when I was really young, my name wasn't really a big issue. Sure, teachers would snicker when they called me and some adults looked at me in a funny way, but the other kids in my class didn't really understand it sounded just like a bad word. As I grew older, though, you can imagine how big a problem it turned out to be. Kids can be really childish because, well, they are children after all, and they made all sorts of nasty jokes about my name whenever they talked to me. And you can imagine how everyone laughed whenever the teachers called the roll. At first, I sort of found it funny too, but it grew old pretty fast. I was super annoyed by the constant jokes and bullying my name brought me. I wanted desperately to change it, and I spoke to my mom and dad all the time about it. But they were so stubborn and nothing could make them change their minds. Even the teachers would laugh at me. It was so bad. And don't even get me started with what happened whenever I went anywhere where my name had to be called out loud. At the doctor's office, everyone would stare at the nurse in shock that she'd be cursing that way. But then they realized it was simply my name, and I walked into the doctor's office really embarrassed. Or when I went to job interviews, the people who met with me always believed I was making a silly joke. They told me I had to take the interview process seriously, and I meekly explained that it was my real name. There wasn't any joke there. They looked so awkward and couldn't believe this could be true. After I showed my ID, though, they'd always apologize, completely mortified. But you can guess I never got those jobs. After all, who would hire a teenager named Puck Yu? Most of my friends understood this was a really sensitive subject for me, and they made up monikers so that they didn't torture me whenever they called me my name. So I was known by those close to me as Fu or Fi. It was cool, and I liked those nicknames, though my parents were annoyed whenever they heard someone call me that. They scolded me and said that I should be super proud of who I was, not hide behind silly names. I explained that it was my real name that was silly, not the monikers, but they couldn't understand it. Or maybe they just didn't want to understand, too focused on protecting their heritage to care about their only son. Once we traveled to my mom and dad's hometown, and I was super surprised that no one made any jokes when listening to my name. But I did understand enough to know that it was a super normal name, apparently. It was hard to believe, but to them, Puck was simply like Jane or John or something like that. It was a nice relief, to be honest, but since I had no intention of moving there, it wasn't really a solution at all. My parents tried to use this as a way of convincing me to be proud of my name, but it didn't work at all. We just argued all the way back and they called me stubborn. I told them that they were the ones who were acting unreasonably. It was my name, so why couldn't they respect my desire to change it? They replied that as long as I lived under their roof and they paid for my expenses, I had to do as they told me to, and that was final. That was when I decided that the second I turned 18, I'd be moving out and legally changing my name. They were so mad at me when I said that and called me ungrateful, but I didn't care. If they wouldn't try and understand my feelings, I wouldn't care about the way they felt either. I was mortified by my name, and it got worse the older I got. I wanted to get into college, but I knew how bad my application would look. No way I would get admitted, even if I had the best grades in all of my school. Just like no potential employer took me seriously, neither would the admissions officers. They would just think I was making a juvenile joke and throw my application to the trash. In high school, people made fun of me all the time. It was really hard making friends, and I was bullied relentlessly. My parents were called to the principal's office a few times to tell them about all the terrible things other students did to me. Mom and Dad thought this happened because Americans were ignorant and kept on refusing to do what I asked them to. All I wanted was a normal name, and I didn't care about our traditions. I could study our language and our history, but why did I have to suffer from constant mocking in order to be proud of who I was and who my ancestors were? Mom and Dad simply refused to understand, and they kept being stubborn as always. This really strained our relationship. I can't say I ever got along well with them at all. During senior year, some of the kids finally stopped mocking me so much since they were a bit more mature, but it still wasn't easy, I'll tell you as much. I wish I could say that adults didn't judge me about my name, but that's not true at all. Older people can be just as mean and cruel as children and teenagers. The tension between my parents and I only grew as I came close to turning 18. They told me that if I really did change my name when I was old enough to do it, they'd disinherit me. I was so mad that they would threaten me with something like that. I told them that it was my life and I deserved to be able to live it the way I wanted to. They retorted I needed to respect my elders. That was a breaking point because neither of us was going to change our minds. So when I turned 18, I ended up moving away. I went to college and they kept trying to convince me not to go ahead with my plans. I booked an appointment at town hall to have my name legally changed. I don't know how my mom and dad found out about it. Maybe my aunt told them or they stalked me on Facebook or something of the sort. Whatever the case, they arrived just before I talked to the judge and they forbade me from going through with my plan. I told them that I was an adult and I'd do what I felt was best for my future. They treated me as if I was still a child and scolded me, but I refused to listen. I continued with the legal process and by the end of the day, I was Luke Yu. My parents were livid. They called me all kinds of nasty insults and stormed off. Ever since then, they have refused to talk to me again. They don't answer my calls and sent me an email stating that I could be their son again when I finally decided to change my name back. Well, I'm not going to do that. So I guess I no longer have a mom and dad. It hurts a lot, but I have to do what I believe is best for me. I still get along well with my aunt and my cousins, but my parents refuse to come to any family event if they know I'll be there. That's how I ended up going to my younger cousin's wedding, but dad and mom refused to show up. It was so petty, but I have no control over them, so if they want to push me away, it's their choice. Knowing how terrible a bad name can be for a kid, I promised myself that if I ever have children, I will give them a nice and normal name. If they ever want to change it though, I'll completely support their decision. It's been years since I decided to rename myself as Luke, and my parents have still not gotten over it. I haven't spoken to them since that morning in the town hall, no matter how many times I tried calling. Thank you for watching. Do you know anyone who has a terrible first or last name? Let us know in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel.